Welcome to the Record Celtic podcast. My name is Daniel Conn. I'm delighted to be joined by Record Sports' Craig Swan. Swan, how's it going?
Yes, okay, Daniel, thank you.
Today we're joined by the one and only Chris Sutton.
Hello, delighted that Swanee's here, and you just said that I joined. So
you're like a big money transfer, Chris. You've come in,
yeah.
hopefully to raise the level of talent around here.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt I'll do that.
Celtic have made a signing in the window after all.
Yeah.
We might come to that, Sonny. I think we will come to that. I think the best place for us to start, though, we're recording this on Monday afternoon, just after the Champions League draw. Pretty favourable draw, Sonny, you'd have to say. No easy teams, obviously, but if Celtic could handpick it, Slovan Bratislava, Kairat, Almaty.
Yeah, I think the experience of last year with Slovan Bratislava, the comfort at which Celtic were able to beat them in the opening game of the league phase would suggest that you wouldn't imagine that much has changed in 12 months, so you would make Celtic strong favourites for that. Kairat Almaty, obviously a little bit more unknown to us, but Celtic have got, Brendan Rodgers has also got experience of qualifiers in Kazakhstan, a couple of games against Astana. Neil Lennon's team played Shakhtar Karagandhi as well and got through that. So all of those ties, barring I think the one, maybe the middle one of those three, Karagandhi was obviously tight with James Forrest scoring late.
2-0 down, weren't they?
I think Moussa Dembele scored a penalty right at the end to win the next one. The first one against Astana before the next meeting with Astana was far more comfortable. I think Celtic won the first 5-0 at home and went over there with a big advantage. So to cut a long story short, if you looked at teams like Basel, Sturm Graz, you would look at the teams that Celtic have come out against and say that's not a bad draw.
We no one wants to go to Kazakhstan, obviously, Chris. But
are you not a fan?
I quite like Kazakhstan.
Just maligned the whole nation there. I mean, for travelling purposes, it's not ideal. But
no, it's but I agree with what Craig said. They could have had a tougher draw. Certainly against Basel. You mentioned Sturm Graz as well. It's but it's still a tie, which is awkward, and Celtic will have to concentrate. Whichever of the two teams who they play.
Cool.
I do think that if at this stage, this always promised to be. We go back almost 3 decades back to Champions League qualifiers, and they are tricky. And we know, and we're going to get onto the subject of the squad, where it's at, the fact that, unfortunately for Scottish clubs, the way the system has worked and the transfer window is shaped, you have to play these qualifiers before the window is done. We all know that. We've seen it all through the years. Virgil van Dijk wants to leave. He's got to play against Malmo. This one wants to go. Moussa Dembele wants to go. There's qualified. It happens all the time. You can't get the signings in that you want, maybe, because you're not there yet. I know, again, we'll get to this. Brendan Rodgers said when he was asked straight out last week, does Champions League, is that dependent on who you might get? And he categorically answered no. So you have to take him at his word, but I'm quite sure there's agents out there who want their players to be playing in the Champions League.
Aye.
So there are no gimmies. I know we're looking at the draw thinking, well, Celtic should stroll that, but that's it's never that easy, and it's more where the squad are at now, which Craig touched on. How a Celtic performed. We got over the line against St Mirren at the weekend. Not the surprise for me, but the Nicholas Coon thing. I wouldn't be selling a player before you get through these qualifiers, and that's I know I've spoke to Craig about this actually last night. I
must be in trouble. That's 3 Craigs and not
yes, really bad. But this thing over the years at Celtic has happened with Ange Postecoglou, with Giakoumakis, happened with Kyogo, happened with Nicholas Coon when a player says that they they want to leave, and that's why you let them go. But these players sign contracts. Yeah. And then you have to think, well, if these players, are going to down tools and throw the toys at the pram, what's the alternative for them? So Nicholas Coon, had he stayed, and I understand the argument both ways, but I think the club, they want to go through. You want to give yourself the best chance. You want to have the best quality. Nicholas Coon, having him in the squad or whatever, he was brilliant in the first half of last season. But what would Nicholas Coon's alternative had been? To chuck his toys out the pram, down tools, and then he's not going to get his move anyway further down the line. People will look at his attitude and question that. So I never like it when the club says, well, a player wants to leave. every player knows when they sign a contract what they're signing up for, and you have to go when the club's ready as much as anything.
The other thing that's kind of, I'm not going to speak for every Celtic fan, but I think a lot of Celtic fans find it quite frustrating as well that, Marco Tellio was in the stands yesterday. Apparently he's going to go to Rapid Vienna, but he can't be let go yet until Celtic have got another winger in. Why couldn't they've done that with Nicholas Coon?
Yeah.
Why couldn't they have went?
In fairness, Brendan Rodgers was asked the question. I was there at Lesser Hampden the night of the first pre-season friendly against Queen's Park. He was asked the question about you get the business done quickly with Coon. It gives you the opportunity, gives the club the opportunity to get a replacement and gives you time.
Mm-hmm. Aye, that's
well, it's not happened yet.
No, exactly. So that's all right theory, isn't it?
If it doesn't happen before, I think it's August 14.
For this tie.
For this tie?
Yeah.
And maybe, I think, do you get one?
You get a wild card, I think. Aye.
So say August 19. That Nicholas Coon replacement has to be there for that game. Or else Celtic have left themselves wide open to criticism for exactly what Chris says.
Mm-hmm.
If the replacement's on, fine. If he's not, and it goes badly for Celtic, they've left themselves wide open.
I mean, we're sitting here, it's the 4th of August. They must, surely, before the 14th, have serious reinforcements in at least one winger, you'd have thought. How can they not?
Well, we've been in this movie.
Well, yeah, but that's what all the kerfuffle this week has been about, and Brendan clearly getting frustrated. But I mean, it happens so often, doesn't it? We have the same sort of conversation.
I know, every year it feels like.
Start of the season. The bottom line is strip it all back. You want to give yourself the best chance of going through. And last season Celtic didn't have that the pressure of the qualifier, but over the years, these are highly pressurised games. They just are, and you can look at the team Celtic are playing and say, well, we should go through. Well, they should go through, but you have a bad 20 minutes, half an hour, and whatever, red card, whatever, an injury.
You've got some great memories. No, but you have. I mean, like the Ajax game, the goal that you scored there, that was a famous night for Celtic. And then following
that was a great night.
The following year, you have the disappointment, the chance at the end in Basel, and it's just
I keep hearing that was a great chance, and that was a
from me, from Swan.
We never would have had this run to Seville, as you pointed out. But no, I mean, so the Ajax game was that was a big game back then for us in terms of getting a foothold, going through, playing a good young Ajax team, and really, really important. You mentioned the Basel game, they scored early at Celtic Park. We ended up winning 3-1. They're a good team. They had the
Yakin brothers,
who were, really good players.
Ajax had Zlatan.
Yeah.
Was it Zlatan or Shota Avaladze?
They had Avaladze. They had
scored.
I think Chivu, Van der Vaart. They were a good young team. So, but that was. I mean, we played terribly at home actually for the first sort of hour of but for the first hour of the game, because we had the 3-1 lead, we were hesitant. We didn't want to sort of. We didn't play with enough freedom as such, and then we got a little bit nervy. The last half an hour, we actually came to grips with it and saw the game through pretty well. But no, I just think these ties are really difficult, and good that Celtic got the first league game out of the way, ended up deservedly winning in the end. But the team is still getting up to speed. But for the club to be in this situation. It shouldn't happen. And I'm sort of, with the interview earlier on the week with Brendan, and then after the game yesterday, I thought that was in many ways a sort of perfect result for Brendan after what he said in the week to go again and double down, 1-0, scoring late. We need players in that attacking department, but then going the route of backing his players, backing his team, and which he did do. But with what he said in the week, clearly there is that frustration, and the club are short in those forward areas. Nothing against Yang, but that with respect to him, unless he sort of goes through the gears and goes up a level or two, he's not gonna. You wouldn't have thought he would be a consistent starter. But then I suppose we could argue that about Nicholas Coon. He took a while to get going. You wouldn't want to rely on James Forrest. I love James Forrest as a player, and then you're sort of just praying that nothing happens to Days and Maida, and that's the situation. And then you've got the Idah situation, centre forward situation. Nobody really knows what Shin is like. We all see sort of YouTube clips and you hear him, well, he's quicker than Idah and he's a wonderful finisher, and he did look good on YouTube, but I'd look good on YouTube if you look back at some of my sort of past stuff. So, there is that. Is Johnny Kenny, is that ideal? I don't think so. No disrespect to him. It's clear, it's so clear Celtic need players in, and the sooner they get them in, it's just, it's simple. Sort of, give yourself the best possible chance. And that was what Brendan was getting at in the week. And we understand I think we all understand the sort of market, how difficult it is for Celtic. I'm not saying it's easy, but other clubs seem to find a way of getting deals over the line. But maybe we can sit here and we can sort of have our own view on this. But in a couple of weeks, Celtic would have got 3 world beaters in, and we all looked like idiots.
I've got a couple of theories on it. I thought that I was always prepared to give Celtic the benefit of the doubt on this one with the Champions League qualifiers, because, without being disrespectful to anyone else, you can go and get players in June. Maybe you can pull a squad up, you can make signings, get guys, but the ones you really want, you're thinking the ones that you really want, the ones that are going to take the team up to the next level, are probably going to want Champions League football. So I was prepared to think, okay, that's maybe why they haven't got them. It's a vicious circle. You want them in for the qualifier, but you can't get them because you're not guaranteed Champions League.
I'm not so sure about that.
Well, the point was, I was prepared to believe that until, as I said, Brendan Rodgers was asked straight out on Friday, are the signings is Champions League football that they make a break for? And he said no. So that took that one out of the equation, as far as I was concerned. And then when that happens, you have to then say, then they're not getting things done quickly enough. Now, Chris and I spoke about this the other day. Celtic are masters, are fantastic at getting deals done. They are really good at getting the best prices, that type of thing. When they're selling a player, they will get their value. When they go and buy a player, it has to be the right thing. Sometimes you might just have to, once or twice, pay a couple of quid over to get a deal done. Mm-hmm. Not every deal has to be deal of the century, but it almost feels like that with Celtic. It almost feels like everything has to be to the maximum value. Do you know what?
On their terms.
Just pay an extra million quid to get. If the manager really wants a winger that might determine whether you're getting through this Champions League qualifier, do you know what? Just go and pay the wee bit extra.
No.
Because last year, you can't tell me, we might go on to Adam Idah, the price that was paid there. But that wasn't the optimum figure I wouldn't have thought, and they had to go over late in the window. So why not just do it early and get the player in?
Yeah, and the financial aspect of that has changed in terms of the money going up another level, hasn't it? So 9 million for Idah, 11 million for Engels. That's what you're paying for development players. That's that's just it. Before it was 2 to 4, whatever. But now that's just what it is, and I think that we all have to come to terms with that. Odson Edouard was 9 million, wasn't he? And that was a while ago. Yeah. So it's all the what ifs, isn't it? What if something goes right, Celtic don't qualify? That's a catastrophe, and people will look at the Coon thing. I'm a broken record with Kyogo. That's
So you've been proven right, Chris. You've been proven right on that.
What do you mean, just on the fact he's not been replaced?
Not been replaced.
Well, you don't. Yeah,
I would say that cost Celtic a treble. I don't know about you, but I would say
you can argue. You can't ever measure that. When you're looking for, like you say, the cup final, that little bit of quality, you think about how many times his sort of sharpness, his awareness. He's such a clever footballer, playing round corners, seeing a pass. A finish, a bit of movement. He decided big games. Mm-hmm. So, I've said this, many, many times, but then, Brendan wanted him replaced back in January. And then, but it is the unknown, really, because, it is unknown because we don't know what Shin is like. We're all sort of pretending we know. And but we don't. He may be a world beater. Yeah. He didn't come on ahead of Johnny Kenny.
That's telling.
Maybe it's going to take him a while to get up to speed, but it's not ideal. Celtic were feeling the way into the season yesterday, and St Mirren, fair play to them, they were stubborn and well organised, everything which Stephen Robinson's teams are, but you sort of feel Celtic easing the way into the season, and that's all right. It's okay if you keep winning. Of course, it's okay if you keep winning. It's okay if you navigate the Champions League qualifier. Of course it is, but you only have to look back at last season and the importance of the fast start. And the fast start is why the league was over in the first half of the season, and that was that. And it's it's easy to, it is easy because the players have to go again to just look back and think, well, we're just gonna do it again. But I just, I always think you try and prepare at the earliest moment. So getting players in the door, that's of absolute priority. And I had a look at the team, the starting team from last season first game, and I think Matt O'Reilly started that game. So Celtic were they were strong. They were strong, and the club shouldn't ever be in a position where going into the new season that they are weaker. But everybody looking at with respect to the players at the front line yesterday,
there's no denying
it. There's not the depth.
You mentioned just quickly Adam Idah, and I wanted to get your take on it, Chris, as a former Celtic number 9. I don't even know how to phrase this. Do you think he'll still develop into the striker that Celtic hope he'll be?
Well, that's very hard to judge. I think he's got some good attributes, but I think that you only have to look at Brendan last season selling Kyogo, and we all thought, oh well, this is his chance, Idah's chance, and then David Maida getting the nod as a central striker ahead of him. That sort of tells you everything you need to know as much as anything. So I don't think that you probably headline this or whatever because that's what you do. But it doesn't mean that Brendan doesn't rate him. He is a development player, and that's Brendan's strong suit as a coach. Aye. And of course, there's time. And yesterday with the game, there are some. He can be frustrating. You can't get away from that. And so then that's where you need the strength and depth, and that maybe that different sort of striker, or certainly. Kyogo offered that. Dazen made us slightly different. He did brilliant when he was centre forward, but I do think Kyogo was different. And then do Celtic have that quality on the bench? I'm not so sure they do, but I think Adam Idah still got 20 goals last season. Yeah,
that's fair. And big goals, like Scottish Cup final winner, Champions League.
So it's just could they everybody else is asking, could they get better? Should they have better? And that's, I think that's a fair debate, and I think Adam has to prove it. And yesterday, I think the one which he smashed against the post late on, that's an opportunity he should have absolutely buried. And then there's it can be frustrating at times, but he does some good things as well. But no, he's plenty of room to develop, just as Arne Engels has as well.
And £9 million, Swan, he's going to play Adam Idah.
Yeah,
more often than not.
Well, but you say that he's going to play at £9 million. He didn't last season.
Good point. Very good point.
It's Chris, when Kyogo left, the opportunity was there for Adam Idah. He had a big hand in the goal against Young Boys that got Celtic through. I think the first, that night, and then he goes to Villa Park and scores 2 goals. And you're thinking, right, okay, it's take-off time. And it didn't happen. Now, yes, he got 20 goals. You can't argue with that, and. That not a million starts in there to get those 20 goals. But the chances Celtic were creating last season. He's entitled to score 20 goals. I think it was your old partner, John Hartson, who said, you don't score 20 goals, you play for Rangers or Celtic as a striker. You shouldn't be there. So, whether you want to say that's harsh or Big John setting a high mark, I don't know. But you would look at the chances Celtic were making last season and he should be scoring 20 goals. And he should have scored more, to be perfectly honest with you. If you look at the chances. And it's not so much the one he takes down on his chest against St Mirren and hits the post where everybody's going to go, that's one. It's more, I think Dazen Maida had one in the first half which he squared across the box and it's just waiting for, and he's on his heels. And they're the type of finish where Kogo's just walking and knocking them in the net. But Celtic have been so used to having that, and also you had Coon coming in at the back post and finishing it. Yang wasn't there. Ange Postecoglou's team, they were fantastic at that. It was Jota and Abada to start with. one across the face of the box, the other one. Then it became Dyson Maida was doing it. That's not there.
He 20 goals last season. He's the player in terms of his finishing who hasn't changed much from when he was at Norwich. And the point the commentary yesterday Craig made about him being on his heels in the first half. He's sort of always been like that. You know, he does score goals. You know, the one in the second half, in a moment like that, though, he's got to. Yes, when he takes it down, not you know, smashing it off the post. I mean, he goes back across me. You know, in a big game like that, he's got to score, and that's why there's that's why there are the sort of there's the doubt amongst not just the Celtic support, but probably the manager in in that respect. So you always have to try and get better in. But I do think he has a lot to offer for Celtic, and I certainly wouldn't be dismissive of him. I think it's a big season for him, and we often mentioned sort of Brendan's skill set is developing players, and he's one where I think everybody will be looking, as with a lot of players, and seeing if they're going to make that next step up.
As you say, Chris, you make the point. Sorry, Dan, if you'll move on here, but Brendan Rodgers has made it clear he wants another striker, and he wants to. If a big money striker comes in, you'd imagine he's going to be first choice, and you're wondering if Dyson made a second choice again. And then where does Adam fit in?
No, but I think the volume of games, which coming around, the squad are short, and it's competition is something as a striker you can't fit. You just you get the opportunities. You have to prove yourself. I mean, I didn't.
You faced it and slid back to midfield and then went to centre half.
I never ever minded that. So I minded moving back to midfield and said I would have preferred to play up front. But when it's a good sign for the particular club you're at if you're bringing in quality players and you have a fight on your hands for positions and you have strength in depth and pecking orders. And I understood sort of where I was at. I was just fortunate that I could play other roles. But Celtic need, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, Brendan talking about gaps, need to fill gaps and what have you. It's glaring how important it is to get more quality in. I thought it was interesting the way that Celtic played yesterday. And it's early days sort of with Kieran Tierney not so inverted as Taylor, and sort of early on especially because they had Idah as the central striker, big sort of physical. Tierney was getting wide and crossing balls in, and that was a tactic. So I think going forward it'll be interesting to see. I mean, it may have been the way that St Mirren were set up with a sort of narrow three in midfield, so he was seeing a lot of the ball, and it's probably a tactic. But over the next few weeks, it'll be interesting to see whether Tierney plays more of that Taylor role and coming in, or Brendan keeps him out in the wider area. Because Alistair Johnson, I was sort of watching him closely as well. He seemed to play pretty much the same role as he always has done. But I think Brendan spoke last season, didn't he, about Johnson being the runner and Taylor being in there to overload and knit things together. So that'll be interesting how Tierney sort of works.
I thought it had a knock-on effect and not a good one. I've got to be honest with you, because I've seen so many of those games at Celtic Park with Tip. I'm like, listen, Greg Taylor's just left. I want to paint Greg Taylor into Roberto Carlos for the minute he's walked out the door, because when that happens. But Greg Taylor was very underrated at doing that job. Now, the three of us have watched a load of games at Celtic Park. Celtic were dominating games. Taylor would go in and be going all technical about it, would become a six beside Callum McGregor. That would give them the two in there, and then the two other midfield boys could play almost off the striker. You used to see Hatate getting beyond the front player, or Bernardo, or whichever one it was. I didn't see one break and run from the two. The amount of times I saw Benjamin Negrin coming and getting the ball next to Callum McGregor yesterday, I'm not sure that's where he was meant to be. And that is, to me, the untrained eye. Brendan Rodgers is the trained eye. I'm the untrained eye. But that was a byproduct of not having that other body beside McGregor to then let those two. So either Hatate or Nygren came short into the game, which left them one shot further up the pitch, and they never progressed it through The way they normally do, the way they passed their way in. You saw a game, was it Kilmarnock last year?
Yeah,
Hatate was getting into the box. Taylor was making, never saw any of the underlapping runs yesterday. Again, that might be something to do with the way St Mirren played.
and that's why I think it's
you can't judge it on one game.
No, not against a back five and the narrow three, because your sort of principle of play.
Celtic are going to face that a lot this season.
They are,
but
also. The basic is you've got to score a goal. How are you going to score a goal? If you have a big striker, then Tierney can get the ball wide and cross balls in, and he sort of has that quality. Didn't always see it yesterday, but that, it's different if you had Days and Maida as a centre forward or Kyogo. Of course, Celtic would have to think about another way, but that's, that was a tactic you play against a 3-5-2. It's quick switches of play, 2v1s. In the wider, and to be fair to St Mirren, they defended the box very well. But that's I don't think there's anything wrong with setting up. I know we all want to see this sort of beautiful game or whatever, but if St Mirren narrow up and defend the box as they do, and Gogic, and
I think every time I see Gogic, I think he's such a good player, really good player. Yeah. Before we move on for the transfer stuff, I just wanted to ask you, Chris, when you were a player, we go back to maybe in your 20s, 45 years ago, when we sorry, I couldn't resist that. So
bang you out,
see, you were a potential target for Celtic. Mentioned Brendan Rodgers, his future a wee bit undecided as well. Would that influence you as a player?
No,
not at all.
No. I know where you're going with this, and it wouldn't have bothered me. You signed for a manager, but you signed for the club and the belief where the club are heading as much as anything. You look at the players, the squad. That was a big part of me coming up to Celtic, of course, when Martin was manager and made the move, and sort of. Part of that was because Martin's ambition, and Leeds United wanted him at that particular time, and so that was a big deal. And I liked Martin, but
so you signed for Martin then.
So I signed. I also saw the Swedish guy they had up front. He was quite.
He was not bad.
So I thought that might suit me. I could have gone to Middlesbrough and played with Hamilton Ricard, but I thought Henrik might be Henrik. Might be a better option. But no, with regards to if Brendan goes, and he had the interview in the week, didn't he, where he was asked whether he would stay, whether he wanted to stay, or words to that effect, and he said yes, and he sort of didn't sound overly convinced himself, but we know why he said it, because he wants players in, and he wants the club to match his ambition so he can have a chance in the Champions League and progress the team, and everything he said made sense. But the club have to, everybody talks about the club's model and the sort of signing policy, but essentially, and I still don't actually know, and you guys can sort of enlighten me here, how the sort of the signing policy at Celtic goes in terms of who makes that final decision, because it always seems to be sort of pushed around there. Well, it's a club signing. I don't know, but that's maybe a tactic as well. But no, it's about building, and that's why I think everybody's looking. Brendan in his last year of his, I'm saying nothing new here, by the way. Brendan in his last year of his contract, and then there are people thinking, well, the club aren't necessarily. There's those theories out there. The club aren't necessarily going to let Brendan choose who he wants to choose because he's in the last year and because there hasn't been that commitment. So until we get over the line with the contract situation, then it's all. That's what you.
That shouldn't be the case, though. I mean, a club of Celtic size should have a recruitment set up.
It shouldn't be. They should have the policy. And they sign a player because
he's a good player.
Because they've done all the analytics and he's a good player and he's going to be a good fit.
Surely that is the case.
Yeah,
you'd have thought.
You would have thought so. I mean, there'll be two or three of them, and then the manager will pick them when he wants out the three of them. That's or five of them or six of them or whatever it is. That's what you would imagine it is.
What is your gut feeling? Do you think you'll still be Celtic manager this time next year? I'm putting you both in the spot, but
my gut feeling will all depend on how the Champions League goes. I see.
Okay,
is my feeling on it. I think if Brendan Rodgers progresses Celtic again, and they show that that wasn't a one-off, and they're capable of going on again, I think he may be tempted to keep at it. But
it sounds crazy.
I think Champions League have a big
it's
bearing on it.
Sounds crazy. We've said this in the Celtic pod before on Hotline Live, but if Celtic were to win the league this year, Chris, 5 in a row, you're Brendan Rodgers, and I get it's only halfway to 10, but you might look at that and look at how strong Celtic are. Could be an outside chance. You could look at that and go, I walked away from 10 in a row once before.
It's a long time.
I know it's a long time. I get that, but how often do these chances come up? You know, I don't know.
Brendan Rodgers said to Chris on the touchline, and Chris and all the people on the touchline at Tannadice last year, nobody knows what I'm thinking.
Right.
I'm the only person who knows what I'm thinking.
No.
Other than Dan.
So you're throwing us under the bus, trying to get us to tell us what.
Yeah, I mean, that's fairy tale stuff.
It is.
How many years would that be in total?
Yeah.
As a Celtic manager?
Right, it'd be a lot.
I think that I'll go before. I think we will know at the end of this transfer window, roughly, if Brendan's staying.
Interesting.
Well, it's not really.
Oh,
It's not
really. Why
I think
that just depend on who gets signed?
Yeah, yes,
right.
100%. Not the it's sort of beyond the Champions League. It's whether he feels that they can. He talked about progressing the club. He feels he has the players in, because nobody knows that if Celtic do get in the Champions League, and then things don't go well. They play play some really tough teams or whatever. Get on the wrong side of a few decisions, this, that, and the other. Then, if he feels he still has the quality the quality players there who can progress, then I think he will stay. But I think we'll find out in the next few weeks with who comes in.
Very last thing, guys, I want to ask you about before we wrap up. I know it's the Celtic podcast, but I wanted to get both your take on Tony Bloom's comments with Hearts last night. Don't know if you saw it, but in a Q&A said he'd be very disappointed if Hearts haven't won at least one title by the year 2035. Does that seem at all realistic to either of you?
I mean, look, recent history in Scottish football would tell you that it's not realistic.
Aye.
To be quite honest, and I admire Tony Bloom's confidence. I admire the systems that he's putting in place. I certainly admire the Hearts manager. McInnes, I think he's top class, but that's a huge ask for over a 38-game season. Tony Bloom is going to have to come up with some serious goods to back his manager.
You look at what he's done at Brighton and Union St Gilloise, where they came from the second tier to win the top tier. He'll probably look at it and go,
I'm not knocking his ambition.
Aye.
I am not knocking the ambition. I would far rather hear somebody say that than say we're playing for best of the rest, etc., etc.
Aye.
But experience of my lifetime tells me as long as Celtic and Rangers do their business properly, they're not going to be toppled by Hearts. That's my own take. But listen, I'll trot out the old Leicester City line. It can happen.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of the Record Celtic podcast. Thanks very much, guys. It's always a pleasure. Thanks for watching or listening, and we'll be back next week. Cheers.